All right. So welcome to this special episode. Basically, breaking news in the Arkansas legislative session for 2025. We're doing an episode today about SB307. My name is Osiris Bali, and I'm Social Justice and Racial Equity Coordinator for the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. And today, we're going to get into a deep dive conversation about this bill and the consequences of it. And we have a special guest, Eddie Moore. Eddie Moore, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, Osiris. This is I lived in Arkansas for 10 years and spent a good bit of time working both outside and inside the state government on issues surrounding electric power rates.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have experience in a number of different states on this issue, and a lot of history with it. And one thing I'll say about this piece of legislation, it's probably the worst piece of electric company anti-consumer legislation I've seen. And there's a lot of technical jargon in there. There's a lot of technical terms, but I think one way to understand it is that this is what happens when the utility company's lawyers and their management get together with the leading legislators and they write something to allow them to freely raise rates for years to come and just hope you can't figure it out. And so I think it's very important for the public policy panel to educate people about this, even if this bill passes, because otherwise, first of all, you hope you defeat it. But if it passes, people at least ought to know which legislators did this to them.
Yeah, and that's one of the big pieces we're trying to get people to understand. Is this is a bill that's going to reduce oversight of the Arkansas Public Service Commission and basically just give utility companies in Arkansas an opportunity to plan or start strategic investments or projects and put that fee and raise utility rates for all Arkansans just based on basically proposals. And they never even have to complete the project. And as long as the bill states, as long as it's done prudently, they don't have to refund customers. And so is this something that you've seen happen in like other states with legislation where they just gives all of this power to utility providers to raise customer rates as they feel pretty much?
Yes, but like I say, I've rarely seen it this bad. But people need to know the history of the specific things that the utility companies are asking for here that the legislative leadership is trying to give them. So they want a special provision that lets them charge you for building a power plant while it's being built and before it's finished. So in other words, if you hired somebody to paint your house, you don't pay them on the front end. You wait until you see what the job is that they've done, and then you pay them. And the utility company does not want to wait. They want to start charging you on construction projects that literally could take over a decade. And during that decade where they are being paid in real time for what they're building, there is a lot of opportunity for the cost to go way beyond the original request because they don't have any cost discipline. Their feet are not being held to the fire because they're just passing through the cost to the ratepayers while they're building. And this has happened before in other states. Usually once it goes wrong, they repeal the law. But I'm talking about billions of dollars of cost overruns that have been charged to ratepayers under exactly this kind of legislation. So there's only 3 million people in Arkansas. Every $100 million is 30 on every man, woman, and child. And we're not talking hundreds of millions, we're talking billions. They're talking about paying for the most large, risky construction projects out there that can come about in the utility business. And by that, I mean, there's two that are known to be super risky financially. One is nuclear power plants.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you haven't heard of it, ask your parents or your grandparents about Grand Gulf, because that was a power plant that Entergy tried to build. They never finished it and they charged Arkansas for it anyway. And they put in place a system of rate making that ended up charging the state $4 billion.
Wow.
And so we're at risk of repeating that with this legislation. I think they probably think it's been long enough that people don't remember. But so one super financially risky type of construction project is a nuclear plant, probably the most expensive and risky type of construction in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Another very expensive type that is included in this bill are large interstate gas pipelines. And what's happening in the gas industry right now is that an unprecedented amount of natural gas is being exported to Europe and Asia.
Mm.
If you went back 10 years ago, we didn't have the export capability. And I'm not talking about the amount of gas, I'm talking about the physical facility to pressurize the gas so it turns liquid and put it in a ship and send it to Asia. But the ports along the coast of Louisiana and Texas have added a bunch of new facilities that are able to compress the gas and send it around the world. And what it's doing is it's driving up the price of natural gas. And the oil drillers and the gas drillers want major new pipelines to get the gas to those export facilities. So it's a double whammy. First, you're going to have to pay for the pipeline. They'll charge
Mm.
you for it on your electric bill, so you won't even know you're paying for it. And then second, when they export the gas, it's going to drive up the cost of gas, which will also drive up the cost of electric power and your gas bill if you have gas. So all these things are contained in this piece of legislation. It's very unwise.
Wow. Okay. So there was talk that electricity could go up as much as 25% monthly for customers, and now you're talking about gas too, which for the past, I guess, 3 years, maybe 4 years, going on 4 years, some of utilities has been accused of price gouging their gas customers, and bills have seen big increases. And there was a big public battle last year where they actually got the Public Service Commission to raise the rate starting in December, and also taking away the CCR credit for customers that helped decrease the bill, taking that away as well too. When we're talking about the impact on the monthly utility rates for people here in Arkansas, um, how can they how can they how can the state justify providing incentives to utility companies when so many Arkansans are already struggling with these high utility bills and really no relief, no regulatory relief?
Well, I'll say this. I don't think the management of the utility companies is concerned about that. I think what happens, this is not the first piece of legislation. There was a bill about 8 or 10 years ago that set up a new way of approving their rates. And it made
Mm-hmm.
it easier for them to raise the rates every year by up to 4%.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that's 4% compounding interest, not 4% of the original amount. So after the first 3 years, the electric bills had gone up 14%. That's not three, that's not, no, they gone up after the first 3 years, they went up 14%. So it's more than 4% a year when you count the compounding. So that was the first step. Then the next thing they did in 2023, they went to the same legislators that are introducing today's bill, and they got a bill to cut back on solar because they don't want customers to be able
Yeah.
to escape these rate increases. They want you trapped so you have to pay them. And
Mm-hmm.
so now this is the third. all you wanted was a double whammy, but it's a triple whammy. Now they've got a bill, they've got their automatic rate increases already in the law, and they've already cut off solar for most people, and now they're going to add in these major new costs. And I would predict within 5 to 10 years that you're going to see one or more multi-billion-dollar boondoggles, because that's what's happened. For instance, in South Carolina, they passed a bill allowing, they cut, the technical term is construction work in progress. That means you're paying for the plant. It's also sometimes called corporate welfare in progress. That means you're paying for the project while it's being built before we know whether it's going to work or not. And in South Carolina, they approved a nuclear plant that was supposed to cost $8 billion. After they had spent $9 billion, they only had it half built. And then the construction company went bankrupt and they abandoned it and they charged everybody for it anyway. And in Georgia, a similar piece of legislation passed. And just over the last year, they finally completed the plants that they started building in 2008 that were
Wow.
supposed to cost $12 billion, which is already astronomical.
Yeah.
And it cost $35 billion.
Wow.
And it has made the Georgia electric bills the highest in America other than Hawaii. And, they have to ship all the fuel to Hawaii. So we have recent experience. We have long past experience, like the Grand Gulf plant in Arkansas, that when you unleash the utility to be able to spend money for a plant and start collecting it from ratepayers before they finish it, over and over, the costs have gone through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is a situation where the utility company lawyers write the bill. And for any of y'all out there who are lawyers, because I'm one, if you're hired by a client, it is your duty to provide them zealous representation. You're
Yeah.
supposed to fight and get everything you can for your client. And believe me, when these utility companies wrote this bill, they were fighting to get everything they could for their client.
Wow. Okay. um. So one of the biggest arguments, I hear everything you're saying, because the way the bill is written, one of the legislators even said it was kind of disgusting how he read it, and with all the legalese and what the consequences would be. He was just disgusted with it. One of the big arguments, and I think it's really one of the fear tactics that they're using too, because that's one of the reasons why I believe it's so much bipartisan support on this bill. But that's just my personal opinion. But one of the things that this sponsor has been talking about when he's bringing this bill into committee and on the floor is the need for new generation here in Arkansas, and him making it seem like this is the only way it's going to be made possible. But I really haven't seen them mention any alternative methods to go about generating new power in Arkansas.
Well, we have an alternative method right now,
Yeah.
because every power plant in Arkansas, and there's a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
was built under the current law. So it is completely possible to build new power plants under existing law. That's not what this is about. This is about increasing the amount of money they make and getting the money sooner. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to wait till the end of the construction period. And what they'll say is, if everybody starts paying on the front end for the power plant, then we borrow less money. And so you're going to pay less interest in the long run. So I think the argument that the utility companies will make for this is that it's a cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
But all you have to do is look at history and see how that's actually worked out. There's a theory of cost savings and there's a reality of massive cost overruns.
Yeah. So when we talk about this bill to a lot of different people, they're sharing their personal stories with how rates are already high for them, the way that they're looking for different options uh, to, pay their bills. A lot of people are trying to cut back on uh, running their heat in the winter as much and running the AC so much in the summer, or just, you know, going the extra step to make sure they're turning off all the lights and unplugging things that they're not using. My question to you about this is, um, why haven't the legislators looked for alternative methods of funding these investments through either like federal infrastructure grants, or why isn't that? Is this some type of interest? I'm basically what I'm getting at. Is this some type of interest for the legislators to agree to something like this for Arkansas?
I think a lot of them probably don't even understand everything that's in this bill. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty technical legal language. And frankly, legislators have a short period of time that the legislature's even meeting, and they have hundreds, if not thousands, of bills. So they don't read them all. And if they did read it, they wouldn't understand what it said. And
Mm-hmm.
not because they're dumb, but because this is a highly technical area. And so, it's not obvious to your average person when you read borrowing costs on construction work in progress should be weighted average capital. Like you don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But to translate it, what it means is we're going to raise your rates before the project's even completed.
So, do you see that there are any like accountability mechanisms that existed to make sure that uh, the bill is called the Arkansas Generating Jobs Act, and I love how they sometimes they name these bills something that seems so innocent when they really have other intentions. But do you see any accountability mechanisms to ensure that SB 307 actually leads to like I'll say like a robust job creation in Arkansas, rather than just to increase profits for utility providers?
I really don't, and I hate to say that, but I think um, the purpose of this bill is to remove accountability, not to add it. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing in here for ratepayers. It's stripping away the protection. This is, you mentioned that there was a kerfuffle over one of the gas companies raising rates. This is the electric and gas companies going over the head of the PSC to the state legislature
Mm-hmm.
and keeping the PSC from keeping them in line.
So, for the average person that would like to testify against Senate Bill 307, tell me, I'll ask you, can you give me 3 talking points that people who want to testify to the legislators, or even just email and call them, 3 talking points to say, vote no against SB 307 because it does this to all Arkansans?
Well, I think it will raise rates on all Arkansans. I
Mm-hmm.
think it invites big cost overruns and boondoggles like we've seen before and like other states have seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I think that's enough. But it also reduces the amount of heads up that the
Mm-hmm.
utility company is even required to give before people know there's going to be a rate increase. So they're not just increasing the rates, they're trying to hide the rate increase. And so I think it increases rates, it invites boondoggles, and it reduces transparency.
Got you. Got you. My last question, and I think those are 3 great points that we can definitely push out to the membership base and just overall in on social media and to other bases as well too, to talk about it, because we do plan on this bill is coming up Monday in the Insurance and Commerce Committee. It's on the agenda already. And if it doesn't come up on Monday, it probably will be coming up on Wednesday. So we're encouraging everybody in Arkansas to make sure that their voices are heard at the state capitol. If they can, go to through emailing, calling, and tell your legislators, in particular the House Insurance Committee, to vote no against this bill, because we know that this is going to be it's not going to be a pretty sight when they see their bills once this starts rolling, when they start proposing these different projects and investments. My last question to you is more about like the environmental protections in SB 307, if there are any. Do you see any language in this bill, SB 307, that require investments in renewable energy or energy efficiency programs, or does it simply reinforce the current control of like fossil fuel based utilities?
Well, it definitely tries to lock up the market for fossil fuels. I mean, there are some provisions regarding renewable energy, but they are completely at the discretion of the utility company whether they want to do it or not. And I think one of the points to, show the legislature that you're aware of what's going on. This isn't the first bill. Like, our bills have already gone up. They went up due to the formula rate bill about I'll find the year, but 5 or 6 years ago, there was a bill that enacted formula rates, and Arkansas used to have some of the lowest rates in the country.
Yeah.
And those rates have been going up, and it's because of legislation like this, and they're not satisfied with what they have. They're coming back for more.
Yeah, and I think everybody's starting to realize that these companies aren't trying to reduce anybody's bill. They might suggest different ways to decrease your monthly bills by doing different things at your house and weather sealing and a lot of other stuff. But people are not seeing their rates going down. Thank you. I've learned to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, but in fact, that's a bright spot in Arkansas. Arkansas has energy efficiency programs help to make your house more efficient and your electric bills lower that are better than anybody else in the South. And that is a way to protect yourself from the rate increases that are definitely coming under this bill. If you have a properly done job of air sealing, making the house tight and insulating it, that's a 20% cut in your electric bill right there. And then if you get a more efficient air conditioner at the point where yours breaks down, and you got to do the air sealing and the insulation first, but that's going to bring your bill way down below the average. And that protects you against this kind of legislation.
Got you. Final thoughts. Are there any last suggestions or anything that you recommend that advocates like myself and other people who are just tired of the utility monopoly here in Arkansas, just taking advantage and scamming people? Any final thoughts or suggestions?
Well, I think, to me, just to end on a bright spot, get your house, get a real energy audit done on your house and figure out how to make it efficient, because that'll serve you well every year from here on out, no matter what the legislature does.
Got you. Thank you. Eddie Moore, thank you for being here with us today, and I appreciate you for all the information. And if you can ever come down to the legislation and testify against bills like this, I think that it would definitely open up the eyes of some of our legislators who might not agree to things like this if they were educated on the issue.
Yes, well, they may not want to hear it, but they need to hear
it. Yeah. Thank you so much. You have a great day. All right.
Thank you. You too. Bye.